just before the war began, Netanyahu was at an all-time low in popularity in
Yeah.
Israel. They were very frustrated with him. They were calling for him to leave office or be taken out of office. And this happened. It unified the country. They got behind Netanyahu. So you see those kind of things happen that are very convenient. I'm a typically a Netanyahu fan. I think he's done a good job at giving them security over time. Um, but you can't ignore the reality that none of this happens in a vacuum.
Pastor Zach Terry out of Florida. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself to get my guests familiar with your story
Yeah,
here?
yeah, absolutely. So I'm a native of Alabama, was born and raised, married, called to ministry, came to Christ in North Alabama around Huntsville. You mentioned Jesse James earlier. He traveled those parts. We've got banks with bullet holes in them from those days. But moved down 8 years ago to North Florida. It's Northeast Florida, just north of Jacksonville. It's the northernmost county on the East Coast in Florida. So culturally, it's a little more South Georgia than it is North Florida. But pastor First Baptist Church on Amelia Island, which is a dream in itself, just a great place to live, great place to serve. And it's a Navy community. So we've got a couple of sub bases around. So a lot of that tribe is in our church, in our community. And also we have a podcast, Code Red, which is real similar, just conversations with people that we're interested in. Um, if I think I remember one of your topics that you had interest in was military. I'm not sure if that's your background or not.
Yeah, no, it's actually not my background, but I have like a sense of humor that the soldiers of war carry with them, and
I got you.
it's due to my experiences through life. And I always wanted to be a soldier growing up, but I
Yeah,
didn't quite make the cut. But I identify a lot with the veterans that I know,
I
and
got you.
I'm just one of those guys that I support my troops,
Hmm.
and I love the camaraderie and the community, and it's sort of like a church, right? I mean,
It is. Yeah,
uh the church has a congregation, and the our soldiers, when they go to war, even when they don't go to war, they have that sense of camaraderie and community and congregation because they spend so much time with each other, right? And
yeah.
so that's a
Um,
big part of why I feel the way I do, is because
I
number
get
one, I
that.
love to talk to people. So
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I brought it up because General Flynn is going to be on our program in late August on 22nd. He's going to be the first episode of season two is coming out. But yeah, man, the early Protestant movement used a lot of military terminology. We used it in our hymns. We used marching to Zion, and men resonate deeply with that. And so that's one of the unique things about our church is we believe if we can connect with the men, that we'll reach the whole family and reach the community. So we try to kind of revive some of those old approaches to ministry and use that not militant but somewhat and the idea of instead of, hey, why don't you join our church, we will invite people to join our tribe, in that same type idea, just to connect with the guys in our community.
yeah, and another reason why I wanted to talk to you, man, is because you were in Israel October 7th, 2023, and you were there during the attacks on Israel. And I wanted to talk to you a bit about that because like number one, it's a hot topic issue, a hot button issue. And man, it, I got to be honest with you. I'm not religious. I am a Christian, but I'm not religious. I don't go to church. I don't practice my faith. So, with that being said, I have noticed an uptick in anti-Christian, uh, and anti-Jewish sentiments over the last few years, especially since October 7th. And I wanted to talk to you about like what was that like being in Israel during those attacks?
So just being there, it was surreal. It was like a nightmare or dream scenario. You keep asking yourself, is this really happening? But yeah, we were on a tour of the Sea of Galilee, and it's I've done it many times. You go out on an old school vessel, and they're casting nets the way the disciples would catch fish, and then as we got back, there's a plan to go typically into a museum where they have a boat from the first century that you get to see. And when we got back, they took us directly to the bus. So I knew something was off. And I asked our Israeli guide, I said, "Hey man, why are we not going to see the boat?" And he said, "Something's happened and it's very serious and we need to figure out what's going on." And so he brought up on social media things that were never shown in the States, horrific videos that they were seeing in real time. And he verified everything. That's in northern Israel. And so we had a day or two there to kind of get our plan together. Gaza, let me see if I'm telling you this correctly. Gaza is nearer to Jerusalem in the south.
Right.
So we left the north and we had accommodations in the south. So we had to go toward the fighting. So as we're traveling through Israel going toward Jerusalem, there are apps on the phones of Israelis
Right.
that will notify them if a rocket's coming in.
Oh, that's crazy.
So we would hear, an alert, the bus would pull over. You would see people out on the side ducking for cover, like covering their head. Well, our people didn't know what that was. They thought people were praying or something.
Right.
So we thought they have a lot of, things that to us as Americans are unusual in the Middle East and rituals and habits. So we thought it was just oh, they must pray at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday or something. And the guy said, no, 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 there's a missile, a rocket's coming our way.
Yeah.
And so it hit within maybe a mile of where we were at, but it was in an open field.
Yeah.
So that happens. We get back to our hotel, and again, you don't think this way, but I would go out on my balcony of the hotel and hear automatic weapons, and you're like, that was a machine gun.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh, I probably should go inside. Go inside, turn the lights off, and so you're there with 50 something people, 54 I think it was total, and we had to navigate how to get those people home. And so
Yeah.
that was a story in itself, but it was surreal. You're reading the New Testament and you're seeing things like you're reading Matthew 24 talking about the last days, and you look up over the horizon and you see smoke over Gaza, and it's different, man. It's really different.
I bet it is. Looking, so watching the news here from the United States, that the day it happened, um, quite frankly, I was pissed off. I was mad. I was very mad. Um, and even before October 7th, 2023, I knew that there's kind of sort of like a ideological war happening. And it's to see it unfold in real time in Israel, and then as it shifted, and the protests started here, and these weren't grassroots protests. These were fully funded, paid for protests by
Totally.
uh, foreign state actors.
Mhm.
And I could see this stuff from where I was sitting on my couch, and I was mad. Boy, was I mad. And I'm still very, very upset. But I come to terms with the fact that I don't understand the complexities of what's going on over there and what how they live. And then I started talking to some people, and it's like Israelis are very most of them when they hear the incoming rockets, they just go about their lives
Yeah.
like every day. And I was thinking like, how would it feel to know that there's rockets overhead every day and have to continue your life like normal because it happens so often. And that's I wanted to talk to people like you about this ideological war that's happening. How do you see it on your end as a Christian here living in the United States? How do you see it on your end, the ideological war between social justice warriors, people like yourself, people like me? How do you see that on your end?
Well, it's, on one hand, it's really simple. On the other hand, it's very complicated
Yeah,
in that on the ground in Israel, the Palestinians and the Israelis, their kids go to school together, they work together. It's it's not that bad as
right,
it's interpreted to be here. Here, it seems like they're, going to kill each other any moment. There, nah, they think that's kind of funny. Most of them have to work together. They have some different religious roots, but uh, in the secular sense, they're not that different from each other. They have the same
right,
problems, you know. So we have friends who are kind of on both sides ethnically over there, and there are more Christians on the Palestinian side than there are on the Israeli side. So when a pastor goes over, that's kind of an odd dichotomy that it
right,
creates. I can tell you this firsthand from what happens on the ground in the Middle East, by the time it gets to us, has been reinterpreted, and you have layers of ideology and interpretation stacked onto it, that it's very different than what they experience. And I wouldn't have believed that if I hadn't seen it. But yeah, we had to give updates constantly to our people, or they were at the mercy of the media, which was not
right.
always truthful. It was spinning both sides, honestly, spinning and interpreting things the way that would get the most views.
Exactly. And I think they do that honestly to gain support for one side or the other because we're
Sure.
we're, we're over here, they're over there, and truth sometimes is malleable in those situations, fog of war type of stuff. Of when they're mad at each other and fighting each other, um, both sides know which strings to pull to get
Mhm.
to get support. And for me, it's a little bit more black and white than it is for most folks. In my opinion, I'm like, look, Hamas stole people, and as an American, like no man left behind kind of thing. We don't leave people behind. Um, and if that was us, if that was the United States, we would stop at nothing to get our people back. And that's kind of the lens that I try to look at this through is not, it is a just war, but it does need to stop.
Yeah.
And if
I
we could
think,
come together somehow and talk and work this out, that it'd be better for everyone on all sides.
yeah, yeah, it gets tricky and on the ground in Israel. If you remember, just before this happened, we're seeing it again literally today. I saw the video today that where they're protesting out in the streets again in Israel and Tel Aviv just before the war began. Netanyahu was at an all-time low in popularity in
Yeah,
Israel. They were very frustrated with him. They were calling for him to leave office or be taken out of office. And this happened. It unified the country. They got behind Netanyahu. So you see those kind of things happen that are very convenient. I'm a typically a Netanyahu fan. I think he's done a good job at giving them security over time. Um, but you can't ignore the reality that none of this happens in a vacuum.
Yes.
What Hamas did is inexcusable. Yeah, I'm all for obliterating that organization and anybody associated with it. What they did, we have not seen.
Yeah.
Pregnant mothers cut open, and those babies taken out, killed in front of the mother while she's still living. That's the kind of thing you read about in some sort of drug-induced massacre. The things that happened, I can't believe happened with forethought, without some sort of chemical. We read about my ancestors, the Vikings that were they had the berserkers that they would get doped up
Yeah.
and go to war. Um, it's something to that effect. It was horrific the way
Yeah.
that they waged that war, and and I can understand totally, and I'm with you. If it's our people, this has got to be, you got to respond to it in a way that it does not even occur to them again.
Exactly. And that's I think we're past that point actually. And when you mentioned Netanyahu, I actually think they've actually so there's a term like cut the head off the hydra. And I think they've done that, and there's been more people that come up through the ranks, and there's new leadership now in Hamas, and that's therein lies a problem. If it, the longer it continues, you're seeing ordinary citizens come up into the organization because they're so pissed off at what's happening to them, and
Well,
and it creates a generational thing.
it does, and this it's going to hit, if it hasn't already done so, a tipping point for Israel. You've had, I think, three today major countries to recognize the state of Palestine, and that included the UK, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yes. It
So,
was UK, Canada, and I can't remember the third one,
mhm.
but
And so
Canada was the latest.
that's not good for them. They do not want that at all. So if it doesn't resolve quickly, then Trump's going to get more pressure, and you never know what Trump's going to do. I'm a fan, but I know in a sense what I'm dealing with there, and you never know. He could surprise us all in the decision that he makes, but that reality makes it seem to be in the best interest for them to land the plane on this and get back to life as normal.
Yes, yes. Before something happens that they can't take back, you
Right.
know. And for me, I just watching all this stuff from afar. You just hope that it doesn't turn into something bigger. And when we're talking about politics in Israel, as far as a one state or two state solution, I was just talking to a buddy about this on the podcast. I stop short of saying what they should do with the one state or two state solution because that's none of my business. I mean, as far as if we're looking at it from a common sense point of view, Gaza is a city within Israel. That's how I feel. That's how the map feels. It's very black and white for me because I'm over here, they're over there kind of thing. And I think we can affect policy with the policies that we have here. However, like, how would we feel if somebody was doing that to us?
Well,
During
here's the thing.
during
I'm trying to think of from where you're at. Do you have Indian reservations where you live?
a few, but not many.
So, they operate in a little different system. Like they've got their own law enforcement. That's the closest thing to understanding how Gaza operates, or how the Palestinian Authority
Yeah.
operates in Israel. It's almost like an Indian reservation. If we're over there and we have an Israeli tour guide, our bus has to stop outside of Bethlehem, which is Palestinian territory, the Jewish guy can't go in. We have to get a new tour guide to go in and tour Bethlehem. And so it's something like an ethnic reservation. They have their own set of governing officials. And to a certain point, they're dependent upon the state of Israel for water and some of their infrastructure. But they do have a lot of say within there's like three or four A, B, C, and then there's a BC.
Right.
And whatever section you're in determines on which laws apply. And it's tricky. And so it's not it's not apples to apples in saying it's like Orlando and Florida.
Right.
It's more like our Seminole reservation in Florida.
Okay.
To, yeah, things are a little different there, and you just got to play by different rules there. So as it is right now, it's like a state with massive sections apportioned over as a reservation that has its own government and it's different. So, how to fix that as a Christian, coming from a biblical perspective, I tend to be more Zionist in my approach to it.
Yes.
I see the hand of God in establishing the state, and I believe that those should go to the biblical boundaries that was promised to Abraham. Practically, as just a human, I see the issue, totally see the issue, and see the problem with that. So I'm going to tend to affirm a Zionist approach that it's all Israel, and they should function as a state within Israel.
I like
But
that take.
that's where I come from on it. But it's that it's Israel is not united. You've got
Right.
a large spectrum of conservative and liberal within the state of Israel. So none of this is as simple as we'd like it to be.
Right. And that's where it breaks down over here, is because it's not simple. And we tend to make things simplified so we can understand them. And I like to say that we here in the West tend to look at the world how we want it to be instead of how it is.
True.
And that's kind of how we deal with politics, and it for I would never have considered myself a Zionist 20 years ago, but the definition has changed over the last couple of years to
Yeah.
include politics. And um, when I say that I'm with Israel, oh, you're a Zionist. And I didn't even know what that meant a couple of years ago. So I had to look it up, and I guess by your definition, yes, I am a Zionist. And I believe that I believe in Israel's right to exist. And for me, I think that it goes back to World War II, and I have a lot of feelings about what had happened to the Jews during World War II, and I'm just now learning as an adult there was more people than just Jewish people involved in that whole thing. The Romanies in Ireland, the gypsies is what they called them, eradicated during World War II, and I didn't know that until a few years ago. But yeah, I would have never considered myself a Zionist until I was called one, and I'm like, well, okay, but why is that a bad thing? And nobody could articulate to me, why that was a bad thing, why it was bad for me to be a Zionist. And I'm like, and I tell them, I'm not even religious, but I believe, and when I try to explain to folks, like, this is how I look at things from a very black and white point of view. Hamas stole people, and then we have to go get them back. And that's essentially how I look at it. As long as Hamas still has hostages, there's still a reason to fight, in my opinion. But it's just gone on so long. The IDF has, in my opinion, the IDF has taken great restraint in even entering Gaza. Um, if that was us, there would be no Gaza left, essentially. And I wish people could look at it from that point of view, from and just understand that this isn't our fight, and we are there to support our friends. And if we're friends with both sides, there's nothing wrong with that. We can support both sides, because this isn't our fight. Um, I just wish that the protests and everything here in the United States, you can't tell if I spoke to a guy on the podcast who owns a crowd sourcing business, and he essentially pays people to gather. And when I was speaking to him, it occurred to me that protests are going to be a thing of the past before long. They're going to make them illegal because you can't like, you don't know who's funding things. You don't know if this is a grassroots type of thing. I've seen many protests here in the city where I live where there were no protests 10, 15 years ago. They're like, nobody cares here. It's There may be 20% of our population here in the city that I live in that even knows the protest is happening.
Right.
And when I drive into these protests, I don't see anybody that I know. And so people are going to look at protests and like, oh, somebody's paying for that. Somebody's paying for that. So they're just going to stop paying attention eventually.
Yeah. I sort of hope they do. I think with this last major organized national protest, it was, the lady that was associated with Walmart, the Walmart family, the Walmart.
Yeah.
Um, we had a lot of people in our congregation who had been employed by Walmart in the C-suite kind of people. The guy who's over Walmart of India is in our
Yeah.
congregation, and they were shocked as a business decision that they decided to get that involved in it. But yeah, that's the world that we live in, to where I look at it in a simple way that if you think about an entertainer, if you think about the Beatles start out singing "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and then they kind of evolve to Imagine, right?
Yeah.
They get that platform, and then they feel like they've got to suddenly solve the world's problems. I think we all wrestle with that to a point, and and the truth is, they were really great at music. They knew music. Another guy may know theology. Another guy may know mathematics. But you can hit a level of influence to where you think you know everything.
Yeah.
And that's where the funding of a lot of this stuff's coming from.
Yeah.
It blinds you to what you're truly an expert at, maybe, and what you have thoughts on, honest thoughts, but maybe you don't need to enforce those. You know,
Right.
um,
Right.
I
When I,
appreciate your take, and I feel the same way that there is a point that I look at it and go, I, I'm not sure they're doing it right. I'm not the guy to fix it. You know, um,
yeah.
that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of these things. Is, man, I pray for those in leadership, because it's certainly not my lane to solve those kind of problems.
Right.
Uh, you know,
Yeah. So I've actually been, one of the reasons why I have this podcast is just to open up dialogue between people and have good, honest conversations between people. So we don't have to fight about so much, the left and the right, we can disagree without arguments if we don't even have to articulate our point even all that well. It's just a face-to-face interaction that kind of helps understand that we are people and we can look at each other like people. And when over the last several years, really since 2016, 2017, I've noticed that there's been a switch here in the United States of people just being mean to each other if they disagree with each other, and ad hominem attacks. And if one person disagrees with policy, they will attack you personally, kind of thing. And I want to open up dialogue and talk to everyone and see what that's about. And when I talked to that guy about the crowdsourcing thing, that's more of just a natural curiosity. Why are you doing this? What's the point here? And who's your biggest customers? And it turned out his biggest customers were actually like businesses that doing product launches, and that's what he does most of the time. But he wanted to come out and discuss the political side of protest gathering and stuff like that. And I just, for me, I've just seen protests over the years that they've turned into meaningless gatherings of one side or the other, who eventually just stop paying attention to those kind of things. And you'd mentioned some of the protests recently, like the No Kings protest. Everybody I know, I know a handful of people that voted left during the last election, but most everybody I knew voted right. And when I drove by the No Kings protest, there half the city, it appeared like half the city was there. Nobody I knew was there.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, what is going on here? And then not even not even 2 hours after they had stopped the protest here, they were in Kansas City, which is about an hour away. And I was like, they're traveling and doing these kind of things, and somebody's got to be paying for that. And
This community that we're in is one of the most raging Republican conservative counties in the state of Florida. And
and,
Florida's
and
all,
that's Florida's pretty right.
yeah, they are now. But if you remember at the last governor election, it was tight. We
Yeah.
almost got a socialist governor in Florida. And so it's county by county here. It's either very left or very right. The big cities, Orlando, Jacksonville, can tend to be left. Our county, Nassau County, is extremely conservative in every sense of the word. And we saw the big protest here, and it would happen on the beach, and you would go down and see just thousands of people. And we were on, they chose up and down the East Coast these iconic small towns. Uh, my wife calls them Gilmore Girls communities, and they would do these protests and just turn things over in these little kind of sleepy, quiet towns. And it got a ton of press. But I'm observing what you said, that over time, it's like the billboard. You drive by it one time, it kind of catches your eye. Fifth time, you hardly know it's there anymore.
Yeah.
Those protests are becoming like that.
Yeah. What? I want to switch gears a little bit. You'd mentioned your wife, and that's one of the things that I've seen coming up in the country over the last few years is the resurgence of families and family centric programming and family centric conversations, and people are going back to church and stuff like that. Do you have you seen like a resurgence in Christian values in the entire country over the last few years?
I think it's being, I think it's being explored. I think it's yet to be determined if we're going to bite the hook entirely. We came back from a month in Honduras. We were in Roatan for our sabbatical. Roatan, Central America, is more of a traditional culture. So my friend Hernan, who lives in Tegucigalpa, when they build a home, they build what they need, and then they go up with each
Right.
generation, right? And so my son went an hour, maybe an hour and a half away from where we live to go to college. That was unthinkable to my friend Hernan. Hey, it's like, how did you sleep at night with your son in a different city? I'm like, brother, that's just how we do it. It's not. He's probably safer there than he is here. He's
Right.
fine. And so I'm seeing that the way that we've done it, which has been very individualistic, we go to church and we ask, which one do we really like? Or a restaurant, it's all about what I really enjoy rather than what's best for my family.
Yeah.
And the family disintegrate over time. And so we've recognized something's wrong, and we're very much exploring. The thing that thrills me as a pastor is when I hear that family dinners are coming back.
I
When
love family dinners, brother. I
you
love
see
family
mom and
dinners.
dad and the kids sit down and have dinner, no apps at the table, no tech, and we have a rule, one conversation at a time. And so that has been just kind of key for us. And when I see that catching on and more people, that determines the job you take, because
Yeah,
some jobs will let you do it, right? And when you're making decisions about, when do I do my workout? What job do I take? What are my hobbies and what am I going to get invested in? When am I going to shoot my podcast? When you're making those decisions around some big rocks like family dinners, to me, that's a great win and it's going to strengthen the family over the long haul.
absolutely, man. And I love every bit of that. So, family dinners here are a challenge sometimes. So, as a family, so there's four of us here at home now, me, my wife, and my two younger sons. But I have four children altogether, and which is honestly not that weird in the Midwest.
Totally.
But across the country, it is like I have a lot of kids compared to people on the East Coast or the West Coast. And for me, I love getting the entire family together. My two oldest kids, 22 and 21, and they have their own babies now. And so I'm a very busy guy. I'm 40, so I'm young. I'm young enough to still have a life, but I've got grandkids. So I I'm very busy all the time, and I don't want to lose that connection with my older children and my grandchildren. So every 2 weeks, I would love to do it every week, but finances kind of limit that sometimes
Totally.
because big meals cost a lot these days. Um, every 2 weeks, we invite all the whole family over, and we do family dinner together. And the house is full of kids and laughter,
That's
and it's
awesome.
always a good time. And the biggest reason why I wanted to do that is so we didn't lose contact with each other, or like life happens. People are very busy, but I wanted my home to be open at least twice a month for the kids to come eat, have a good meal, have good conversation, get with mom and dad, and hang out. And when I started that, I didn't really understand the full scope of what that would do for us. But yeah, it's made us a lot closer. And we try to eat as a family every day together, but it doesn't always work out. My 15-year-old likes to eat in his room. We don't like to eat at the dinner table because we only got two janky chairs, and we got to bring other chairs
Yeah.
from other rooms in there, and so
Let
we
let me
we go ahead.
let me show you a couple of things that may hopefully encourage you, but may help as well. Biblically, someone told me once, and I don't know who to give credit to. It's been years ago, but they said, you can think of the history as a series of great men or great people,
Yeah.
great events. But he said he liked to think of it as a series of meals.
Yeah.
Biblically, history began with the meal in Eden. It concludes with a meal in the marriage supper of the Lamb. And there are two major meals in between. You've got a Passover in the Old Testament, communion, Lord's Supper in the New Testament. And he showed how much of ministry happened for Christ around meals. And he said every meal is in a sense sacred. So that really got it on our radar years ago. And we came across a resource. Do you know the name Doug Wilson at all from
No.
Idaho?
Nope.
Okay.
Name doesn't even
He,
sound familiar. So
he's a pastor in Moscow, Idaho.
okay.
You might hate everything he's got. I don't think you will, from what I can read of you right now. But if nothing else, just for what he's done, what he's written on time around the table for families, it will be one of the most. You'll call me and thank me when you see what he offers there to solve some of the problems that we all deal with, and some of it's just enjoying the chaos, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
just be thankful the chaos is there and it's not scattered all over the place. But
That's a very
very
good point,
helpful.
man. That is a very good point. We I say this all the time. We all, as people, we tend to look at, especially the individualistic society here in the United States. We tend to look at the things that we don't have more than the things that we do have. And I try to focus on the things that I do have all the time. And it brings up this conflict for me. It brings up it almost invalidates my feelings sometimes on when things are going bad. I just want to feel bad sometimes. But then I start this thinking of my life's great. What do I have to complain about? Why am I angry? Or why is this thing getting chaotic here when all I want is peace? And for me, it's a conflict inside my head that I have to try to stay positive while I want to be pissed off on the other
Yeah.
hand. I want to be upset. I want to be, um, I want to be in conflict with someone. And I think it's just in that moment, like my brain is trying to tell me, like, calm down. Things really aren't that bad, fella, And
Well,
so I,
the way you started with just seeing the state of the world and what some other people are dealing with, um, I never thought that I would give thanks for power steering until I went a month without it this month. And I sit down in my Jeep and I'm turning and I'm almost breaking the steering wheel because I'm wrestling with it, and the little, roads that are somewhat smooth,
yeah.
um,
I
we
can
don't
totally
realize.
identify with that. I've been out of power steering for about 2 years now in my vehicle.
Oh, it'll
So,
change your life. Yeah, when it comes
yes,
back, you're like, oh my goodness.
yes. Well, I think I've spent too much money on this vehicle. It was a free vehicle, and
Yeah,
I spent about $2,000 getting it running. And
yeah.
as a favor for one of my family members, I just kind of took it off their hand. I needed a vehicle anyway, and they gave it to me. I was offering $500, and my brother just gave it to me, and I was like, man, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So I kind of felt obligated to at least fix it and drive it around for a while. I've been driving it around for 3 years as a free vehicle. And so you kind of have to make that decision. Is it worth putting more money into? And I've already made that decision a long time ago. No, it's not. So I just live without power steering. And my wife goes to drive my car and she's like, man, I've got to work out. No, now you know how I feel.
But
But yeah, yeah,
you remember the guys back when we were kids that took so much pride in that,
yes,
100,000 miles on a vehicle, and so few men can even say they do that today or have ever done that,
yes. Yeah, I don't
Probably
even have
most
air
people that we
conditioning.
know, yeah, most of the guys we know have never driven without power steering.
Right,
Uh, I learned to drive in a 64 Chevy pickup truck, so I had to
right.
start it out wrestling that thing. But I think our kids need that. They need to see dad doing some hard things sometimes.
Yes, yes. And the kids themselves need to struggle too, right?
Yeah.
I think watching the parents struggle, it shows kids that number one, nobody's invincible, right? We all have our problems, but it also shows them how to problem solve. You
Yeah.
know, like I don't run. When I need help, I do ask for help, but I'm a great problem solver, and it's really good for my kids to see that in real time. I go off this um, basic like honesty parenting type of thing. I'm an extremely unconventional parent. I don't hide the negatives of life from my kids. As a matter of fact, if they have questions, I have no problem talking with them about anything really. If it's an age inappropriate thing to talk about, I will try to find a way to relate to them to get them to understand exactly what's happening. But I don't hide the bad parts of life. Addicts. I have addicts in my family, and while we try to protect our children and keep them away from harm, I think it does more harm lying to them about it than it does educating them about it. And whereas, my sister was an addict for many years, and I love my sister, and the drugs weren't who she was. And I wanted my kids to know my sister. So I
Mm.
protect my kids while they are around my sister. But I let them see what drugs have done to her life. And we're very honest and open about it. How do you feel about this kind of thing? And um, when they see the consequences of other people's actions, they're less likely to make those mistakes themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree. We aired on that side. So like from our early days as parents, we didn't, Christmas rolled around and they asked about Santa, and we're like, Santa was a bishop in Myra back years ago, and he's been dead for a long time. But we'd tell them the story of Nicholas. Um, and then we would say, don't ruin it for everybody else. Don't be a little jerk. You're going to get gifts. Don't be a jerk. But we try to establish mom and dad would always be honest with you.
Yeah,
So we said if they weren't good at something, my son is a tremendous musician. He's got a contract with Sony right now to produce music,
that's
but
awesome.
but he was horrible at sports. I mean, horrible. And we would let him participate, but I'm talking, some of it you can train out and get better at. His threshold was pretty low.
Yeah,
He was tall. He looked like he would be good at it, but we just weren't a great athletic family. So we always try to be honest about it. It's like, look, man, if you have 3 seasons in a row and you're in the bottom 10%, it's probably not your sport. So let's figure out something else, and we always let them know. And I think we may have erred in being too honest at times rather than being an encouraging parent.
me too.
But that they know, if I look at them in the eye and I say, you're good at that, they know I'm not blowing smoke. They know,
Yes.
you know. So that's the approach we've taken as well, and I think they've appreciated it. We've got the same background. We've got addicts in our family. It's more in the grandparents, great grandparents, but they've seen it. They know the cost of it.
Yeah,
Um, they know it's a human struggle, you know.
absolutely. And it is a human struggle. And people aren't disposable. And we can't just we can choose our friends, but we can't choose our family kind of thing. And I love my sister dearly, and for, I did. So I've had this conversation with her since she gotten sober, but I had to mourn my sister. I had to mourn my sister's death while she was still alive, and she'll never be the same person she was when we were growing up. Um, that part of her life is over, but it's still nice to sit and reminisce about those times and just kind of discuss the people that we used to be. But with my sister, it was like I did have to have those conversations with her. Like, I had to mourn your death while you were alive because I wasn't sure you were coming back from this.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean I want to throw you away. You're still my sister. I still love you. I'm not going to enable your behavior, but you're more than welcome to come over here for a meal, if you want, if you need a warm place to sleep, you're more than welcome here. But don't mess with my family. And I made that uber apparent to my sister at that time. Like, you are my family, but the family inside my home, I have to protect them. And
Oh,
that means
you're the kind of brother I would want if I were in that situation. It's I love I'm studying through Genesis on Sundays right now, and I love the honesty of the scriptures in that. You look at somebody like Noah, who was the only hope for the human race. God's done. He's finished. He's going to work with Noah and his family. Noah gets off the ark. He builds an altar. He worships. And in about 6 months, he's drunk, laid up in a cave, doing some horrible things.
Yeah,
And that's just humanity. That's who we are. There's one good guy in Scripture, and the rest are jacked up people that are trying to figure it out. And the way that story in particular, he had two of his sons who walked in and tried to cover the shame of their father, and one that made a joke out of it. And I think that's the kind of brother you want to be, is the one that says, look, I'm not going to affirm what you've done, but anything I can do to alleviate it or help you get out of it, that's what I'm going to be. I'm not going to
absolutely.
I'm going to make you the butt of the joke. I'm not going to make life any harder on you than it has to be. But if I can help cover the shame that's happened, that's what I'm here for. And I want you to do the same for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so she's sober now, and
Good Lord.
she lives an unconventional lifestyle. They actually live off the land, and
Mhm.
they're homesteading. I'm kind of jealous of them, but
Where are they at?
here in Missouri,
Oh, okay.
they live probably less than 10 miles from me. But they're in a they have a little chunk of land, and they got a camper on that chunk of land, and uh it's not the prettiest thing, but they're together,
Well, those are
and
fascinating stories. How people do that? I don't know how they do it
I'd
without.
actually love to do it.
I would too, but I don't know how you do it without YouTube. Figure out how to do all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
that's me. I'm not handy at all, but so I'm very good. I suffer well. I
Yeah.
say that I suffer well. I grew up poor as poor can be, and when I was a kid, if we didn't shoot it, catch it, or grow it, we didn't eat.
Wow.
And I say that, of course, we lived in the city and we had government assistance and stuff like that, but it wasn't enough. And we grew our own food. I didn't go hunting, but I had family members that went hunting. I fished. We all fished. We that was a favorite pastime of my parents growing up, is fishing. Um, and just being that poor, I learned how to be self-sufficient. I learned
Mhm.
how to do things. And as I was an adult, as I was growing into an adult, ages, stages, and financial situations change. I got civilized. I really did. I got civilized, and now I'm getting older. I'm getting having grandkids, and I'm learning that my kids don't know how to do anything. They don't problem solve very well. When they have questions, they call me, and I don't like that, because I want them to figure out their own solutions, like I had to. Not not because I'm mean, but because I want them to be self-sufficient. So if something happens, they know how to take care of themselves. And I kind of look at it as a failure on my part that they're not ready for that. But there's always time.
Yeah.
And we've not bought a loaf of bread since January. We make our own pizzas now. Um,
What are you using?
what's that?
What are you using? Are you grinding? Are you grinding the wheat? What are you
No,
doing?
no, I'd love to actually do that, but no, we're using like a store-bought flour, and of course, eggs, water. It
Yeah.
doesn't really take. I don't know the ingredients because I don't make the bread. But my wife makes the bread. I know how to bake and put things together, but she makes this amazing bread. It's like three ingredients, and we love it. But that kind of started out as like a more of a clean, healthy living kind of
Right.
thing. But the more we do it, it's like we've gotten the cost of bread down to less than $1 a loaf. Our pizzas, like on pizza night, we were spending 50, $60 at the pizza places. We home make our own pizza now, and our bread, and we've gotten the cost down of two large pizzas less than $5, you know?
Wow.
which feeds the entire family. None of us are hungry. $5 for a pizza, you know? And the more I do stuff like that, the more I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go off the grid. I'll live in the mountains type of thing. And like you would mention like, how do you do that without YouTube? Like I live on YouTube, man. I'm watching YouTube or listening to YouTube all day long. So we would have a few creature comforts, but I'm ready to pack up and live in a cabin somewhere, man.
It's attractive. Yeah, we play around with things like we like to make our own bread as well. Um, I noticed this week my wife bought some new grain. It's like one of these ancient grain type
Yeah,
deals that I can't. I went in. I don't know. It's probably been 10 years ago now. I started having these allergic reactions. We couldn't figure out what it was attributed to. Had a test done, and they said, well, it's a mild wheat allergy, but it's like a 3 out of 10. So you shouldn't be itching all over, your eyes swelling shut,
right.
lips up, all this stuff. But they said, come off of wheat and see if it helps. And so I did. Symptoms went away. Everything got better. Less pain, less digestive issues, all this. So I asked the doctor, I mean, I'm 49 now, 38, 39 at the time. And I said, I've eaten bread all my life. Why is this just starting? And he said, well, it's either because your system's just tired of fighting it or the grain has changed. He said, real wheat that they grew 1,000 years ago, it's like, that tall.
Yeah.
Today, it's like that tall. And he said, there's genetic modifications, all this stuff. He said, you may find some success with ancient grains that are, that have not been modified. So we're playing around with that and just seeing, but all the things from grinding it, we're trying to figure all that stuff out, where to buy it at, where to source it. Those are fun problems to solve, and just
They
you
are,
never
aren't they? It is amazing fun.
and if it all hits the fan, you're going to be in good shape. You're
Right,
going to know more
right.
than the average guy, right?
Well, I mean, even like right now, I'm sitting next to a grow tent. I'm growing my own cannabis here in my house, and it's legal here, folks.
How
Um,
much do you grow?
so I just started actually. I've got two plants over here, but of cannabis, but we don't have like a garden. I would love to have one, but we don't have the time to give it the proper attention. And my wife would love to have a garden, and she keeps begging me. She's like, "Let's have a garden. Let's have a garden." And I'm like, "I would love to, but I'm don't want to be the one taking care of it, and it'd be your idea, but I'd be the one doing all the work."
Yeah,
And
right.
she's like, "No, no, you wouldn't." I'm like, "Yes, yes, I would. I know you. We've been married for a very long time. I know you, and I know
A funny
me."
story. Funny story. I'm a Southern Baptist pastor. Okay. Some of
I
what
was
you may
raised Southern
about
Baptist,
that.
by the way.
Okay, so you know a little bit about that tribe. Um, as a Southern Baptist pastor, when I was probably 14, 15 years old, we were on vacation and not a pastor then, not even a believer then, but I'd been raised in church. I'd never tasted alcohol, never seen any type of substance that would have been illegal. And I walk out on the patio of the place we were staying at, and I could smell what I didn't know at the time was marijuana. And I said, Dad, what is that smell? Dad comes out and I'm like, you smell that? What is that smell? And Dad said, be quiet, son. Somebody's smoking pot somewhere around us.
Yeah.
And I said, why does it smell so familiar? And he just started laughing. My granddad grew marijuana in his backyard.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never knew that. He was the most chill guy you've ever met. He ran a service station, and I never saw him get upset. He was the most laid back, chill. I never understood why my grandfather was the most relaxed man on earth until I heard the story that he used to grow some marijuana.
Yeah,
And
so then
so,
then you got it clicked. You're like, "Oh, it makes sense now."
yeah. Yes, that's
Yeah.
why it smells like apple pie when I smell marijuana, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. And when I started this whole journey, I was kind of it was a way to save money originally. I was like, man, I'm spending too much of family money on this whole thing, and I either need to quit or grow my own. And it's recreationally legal here in the state of Missouri. So I was like, well, let me try to grow my own and see how that works. And now, like I've got my first two plants going, and I'm addicted. It's like now I'm like, what else can I grow? I want to get some tomatoes going. I want to get some broccoli going, some lettuce and stuff like that. And then the
Yeah, it's
more,
fun. And there's certain things in your area that will grow better than others.
yes,
And
yes,
the soil that we have, without a lot of help, is going to produce things like peppers really, really well.
yes,
The best Carolina Reapers. I mean, I can supply Florida with Carolina Reapers. But peppers, jalapenos, banana peppers, bell peppers, any kind of pepper we can produce. The heat makes tomatoes a challenge,
yes,
but fruit trees, lemons, limes, we say we grow guacamole in the backyard.
yeah. Salsa
Sweet
garden.
avocado trees, those kind of things do well where we're at. But yeah, it's fun. And there's something in a man's nature that I trace back to our forefathers: be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. I think there's something in a man, especially, that if you give me a puppy, I want to figure out how to turn that into five puppies,
Yes.
multiply. And in land, if we can make it produce, I think it's very human to want to do that.
Brother, it sounds like you and I like we're simpatico. That go forth and multiply. I say it all the time. I was once asked, "How do you feel about being a grandfather at age 40?" That's got to be kind of you're too young to be a grandpa. I'm like, no, go forth and multiply, my friends.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. It's human. It's an ancient memory that's there that feels very natural to people. Yeah, go back and check out. We're in Genesis studying all that right now, and so if you have any interest um, in kind of diving into it with me, it's been a really fun study.
yeah. Do you talk about that on your podcast?
No, the podcast is sort of the things that I don't want to talk about in sermons.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So in a sermon, I really am textual. I try to stay to the text and let the text set the agenda. If the text gets into some things that are ideological, which and it does quite often, or what people may determine or is political,
right,
I kind of stay away from that. I try not to take it there. I let it take me there sometimes.
right.
But in the podcast, it's everything else. Yes, so you've got the alien doll behind you. We'll talk about aliens. We'll talk about all the other stuff that does not naturally emerge in the text always, but it's people are trying to solve those problems, and we'll try to give them biblical ways of looking at it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Like, well, you'd mentioned the alien back there, and some of the texts in the Bible actually reference esoteric
Totally.
happenings, and
Right.
and they could be interpreted as like Ezekiel's wheel could be
Yeah.
interpreted as a UFO story, which it
So
often is.
I look at those. We have a traditional idea of what an angel or a demon looks like. And I think that what all of the emergence of UAPs, UFOs, aliens, the whistleblowers that have come out, all of this stuff that have so much consistency from whether it's what they're traveling in or what they look like, how they behaved, that I think it's going to just show us, oh, we're kind of in one of those movements where we've attached a lot of our preconceived ideas on scripture rather than let scripture tell us how it is.
Yes.
So I'm thinking I'm sure you've heard kind of where Tucker Carlson is moving and a lot of
Yes.
this thing spiritual. I'm tending to be right there with him in that I think it's real, but I think it needs to redefine what's always been there. What every culture under the sun has seen. Um, the reality of angels, fallen angels, it may be very different than what we've assumed up to this point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there's so many things that bring it back to the scripture and to ancient times and the, we say UAP, we say UFO, but this phenomenon has been going on for a long time. If you go back in
Yeah.
history, there's historical texts since the Bible that have referenced these things, and we
Oh, and
see
drawings
paintings.
you'll
Yes,
see. Yeah.
painting. Yes, and the the religious aspect of the phenomenon is impossible not to see once it's brought to your attention. It's
Right.
impossible not to see. And I just thinking about collective consciousness. I believe in a collective consciousness, and it's very hard to ignore these things when they're right in front of you. And Tucker Carlson is so you'd mentioned Tucker Carlson, and he's got some government inside folks in his ear, and he knows a lot of folks. He knows a lot of people, and there is Tucker Carlson's not the biggest person in the government, like government connected person that I've heard talk about these things. Luis Elizondo has spoke about these things. David Grush, the whistleblowers have spoke about um, the religious aspect of the phenomenon. And no, we can't rule that out. And I
I,
think it's more likely than not that you're correct. What we're seeing is more biblical than what we'd like to admit.
well, you go back for me personally, 8 years ago, I was having dinner with a gentleman who was he was high ranking in the FBI, and he had a tragedy happen and a medical setback, basically. So lived in our area, was working at one of the training facilities for training how to weapons practices, best practices, all this type of stuff. And we went to dinner one night. And at that point, this has been again 8 years ago. I was just curious from stuff I was hearing. Rogan made me at least think, you know. And so I said, these videos that have come out, what do you do with all that? And he looked at me and he said, oh, they're demons. And I said, I'd never heard that before. And I thought, like you said that very confidently and quickly. He said, "Oh no, in our circles," he said, "it's commonly understood. Those are what we consider spiritual entities, and they're real, and it's not going a good direction. Ultimately, is what he said." And so I honestly left that dinner that night thinking he's crazy. He really did. Whatever accident he had, it really messed him up. But I never forgot that. And the more that I watched it, the more I thought, I wonder if it's possible that maybe I've misinterpreted these angelic encounters in the scriptures, the demonic encounters, possession, all of these things. And I wonder if there's something about it that may be more, at least have a material dimension to it.
Yes,
That,
yes.
I think about like Daniel was praying. And when the angel showed up, he said, I would have gotten here earlier, but I was hindered by the prince of Persia. A demonic entity hindered me from coming to you. Well, we think angels could just appear.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not quite that way. Maybe there are some limitations and means to an end for them, like there are for us. And so it's made me rethink a lot of things in that realm.
And it's so interesting to think about, man. It is really interesting to think about that. I was just talking to my wife yesterday as like, so I am a UFO nut. I love the subject. I love everything about it. The science, the theories, the religious aspect of it. And I was talking to my wife and I was like, this is so interesting for me that I have a hard time understanding those folks that it's not interesting to. When folks say, oh, I don't have enough time to pay attention to that, like I'm wondering why, because it's one of the most interesting things I've ever heard of. And you had mentioned 8 years ago, the New York Times articles in 2017. That's essentially how I figured out, like, found out about most of this stuff. And I didn't even learn about those until 2020.
Mm.
And then, so by then there was four, five, six articles from the New York Times, and I'm like, the New York Times is coming out and saying UFOs are real. Government employees are coming out and saying UFOs are real, which ties back into the beginning of our conversation. I wonder if some of the things that are going on over there in the Middle East aren't biblical.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
In my sense, everything, the size of the domino is the question. It's not, is it a domino? Um, yeah, how, if you look at what's happening with Hamas and you see, we know biblically that the hook is going to be in the jaw of Russia, and Russia is going to attack Israel eventually, and China is going to come in with them. When you see an alignment between China and Russia and siding with Hamas, it's at least setting a wonderful stage for what is told will eventually happen. And so, I mean, you go back in our lifetime, when was Russia ever concerned about Israel or
Yeah.
China concerned about Israel? Um, and so there's things that we're seeing that it's so much. I mean, when in human history could the whole world look at something happening in the Middle East at one time?
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
told in scripture that when the two prophets fall, the whole world is watching.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so it's just,
I've been actually saying a couple of, for a long time now that I believe World War III already started. I believe it started October 7th, 2023.
wow, it's interesting. I haven't considered it. Um, there's
Well,
a
when you
guy.
look at all the players you had mentioned, China, Russia, all the players involved are the big three, and Israel is the place where it's happening. You know, and if, for me, it's impossible to ignore all the signs and all the even if you don't like Donald Trump, there's something biblical about him being elected, man.
Yeah.
There
Let me
really
ask you
is.
this. Let me ask you an honest question, and it's not going to hurt my feelings if you give me an answer that I hope you don't say, but I want you to be honest. Uh, if you're not plugged into a church, why is that? You seem to be really interested in these things.
Um, Ego, I guess.
Our ego
So
as pastors, or your ego, or what are we talking about?
my ego.
Oh,
So
okay.
a long time ago, I used to go to church. And as a matter of fact, I'm still a member of our local church here. I just checked into this not too long ago. Once you're a member, it never goes away unless you rescind that membership. I'm a member of a First Baptist Church here in the city where I live. I grew up going to church, and I've not always been conservative. I've been more progressive, more left than not. And even right now, I'm not totally conservative. I'm more center. I do have
Probably
a
guys like us, we can be conservative fiscally or conservative socially or uh,
yes,
theologically conservative, socially liberal. I mean, that's just kind of how our g- generation approaches things. It seems like.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so when I was growing up, I did go to church, and I did have that community and the fellowship and the congregation. And just the older I got, I didn't need it anymore. I didn't I thought religion was bullshit. I didn't know what to believe. The older I get now, I actually understand religion may be a control mechanism to control the masses. And I believe in that. I understand it. I understand the need for that. But I took shrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. Gosh, it's been almost 10 years ago now. But when I did that, it changed my whole worldview on everything, life itself. I believe we're all connected. And I don't feel like I need a church to believe. I feel I have more in common outside of the church because when you go into a church, there's expectations on behaviors and it used to be when I was going to school, going to church, you wear your Sunday best, and people were judgy all the time when I was a kid at a church, and I had earrings, and I heard nonstop jokes about that. And it turned out our pastor at the time wasn't a very nice person, but thankfully he didn't have to be a nice person. But I think I just grew out of those beliefs as I looked at it as a control mechanism. And I was like, okay, I don't need to go to church. I got better things to do on Sundays, than to go to church. And then the drugs, the girls, and the temptations, and everything that I had gotten into. I just didn't think I needed church, and I wasn't a big believer until
I appreciate
recently.
your honesty about it. I really do. I can tell you, I can't obviously can't speak for anybody but myself, but I think it would surprise, and it may be a generational thing. It may be a geographic thing. I don't know, but like when I come into worship on the Lord's Day, and if I see somebody whose approach to life is different than mine, it just doesn't occur to me. Like I never, I think the biggest shock that most people in this community would have if they could read my mind is how little I care about who they're sleeping with, what they're putting on their face. It just doesn't cross my mind.
Right.
I'm fascinated with the text, absolutely fascinated with the text. I love group dynamics. I love people coming together and having all these rough edges and having to, knock a few of those off to get along together. Um,
But I didn't know I needed that until my later years.
I get
I didn't know I needed the congregation, man. I really didn't. And now that
well,
I'm older and I have no congregation, it's like I need people in my life.
it might be a good idea to visit a few and just look for those things that are ancient without without just swapping one sacred cow for another. Our goal is in this congregation is we want if Paul walked in, the apostle Paul walked in, we want him to feel somewhat like, oh, I recognize this,
Yeah,
you know, and that doesn't mean we're going to have statues up because his church wouldn't have had statues up.
right.
Uh, it doesn't mean those type things, but we want him to be like, okay, the elements of worship, they're we did communion, they do communion. We spoke to one another in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, they do that. We had prayers, laying on of hands, um, baptisms. They're doing the same stuff that we're doing. The exposition of the word, the public reading of scripture. They're doing these things. And so that's kind of what we're striving toward is something that would be familiar to the apostles. And
And see, that kind of thing is just weird to me, to be honest with you.
no, I
It's
think
like
you'll find it real
the
fascinating.
rituals of it, and I
Well,
do find it fascinating, but it's not something I'd want to participate in.
I think it's strange, man. It's like any of this other stuff we've talked about that you and I might be fascinated with. It's kind of like the family dinner.
Yeah.
You can explain why that's a good idea necessarily, but you've observed over the long haul that your family's closer when you do it. And I think in some ways, the traditions of one day a week that we build our life around that one day. It's the Lord's day. We come to the Lord's house on the Lord's day with the Lord's people, and the Lord's book is open, and we sing the Lord's songs. And there's something about that that is just remarkably life-giving,
Yes.
um, if it's understood and believed, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's the big thing though, right? Is belief. First of all, the people that don't believe aren't going to come to church, and they're
you
not
would
going
be
to get
surprised at
together.
that. You would be surprised at that. We ask people all the time if they join our church, if they want to be baptized. We always kind of do a little interrogation and go, well, how did you hear about our church? You would be shocked at the number of people who said, oddly enough, my atheist friend invited me.
Really?
Yeah. And so we'll ask, we'll probe, and it's like, that makes no sense. Why would an atheist? They're like, they come here every week. Why? Why? I wouldn't, if I didn't believe, I would not be here. And we'll talk to them and they'll say, well, here's what we found. We don't believe that the scripture is the word of God. We don't believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. Um, but a lot of the stuff that you're saying about marriage makes sense. A lot of the stuff you're saying about worldview makes sense. So this is the only place we get that, because there's
Yeah.
nowhere else in the world offering that. So it's, to them, they look at it like a free seminar, once a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And they come and they check it out. And there's things that we say they believe, you know, about marriage and about finances and about, all this other stuff. So eventually our hope is that they'll believe in the Christ that we preach as well.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but until then, they're inviting people better than some of the old timers are.
Yeah. So I guess you could put me in kind of that camp. I'm definitely not an atheist. Definitely not. I used to consider myself one, actually. But then once you look at the meaning of the word atheism, atheist, they don't believe. And it, I was agnostic, didn't know what to believe. But now I am I look at it more on an intellectual level, I guess you could say. I you could put me in the camp where like maybe I don't believe that the scripture is the word of God or
Be
that
a
that
deist,
Christ actually. What's that?
maybe a deist. Is that where you would put yourself?
I have no idea actually. I believe, and the older I get, the more I believe. Like heaven might have a geographical location. That's where I'm at. Like intellectually, I'm very obsessed with space, and dimensions and UFOs and the whole science aspect of it. But I believe that it's all connected. I believe that you and I actually share a consciousness. I believe that you and I actually share a consciousness with the blades of grass and the trees outside. I believe this whole thing is connected, and I
So
believe it's
that
connected to
leans a
God.
bit, that leans toward like pantheism. Um,
Yeah, yeah, kind of. Except for if you look at the entirety of the universe as alive and as a consciousness, that consciousness belongs to God, in my view.
does that relate to some of your experiences with psychedelics, or where does that
Yeah,
concept come from?
yeah, it actually does. So when I was under the influence of psychedelics, it opens things up. It opened up my mind to the possibility that I may be living in something that I can't understand, that what I'm seeing is not real, so to speak. I mean, it's real, it's there,
Yeah.
but it has a different meaning, a different
I
purpose, and our eyes and our brain chemistry is interpreting things for us. So what I
Yeah,
see,
I
you may
understand that.
not see.
I've always landed when I've thought through it, kind of where C.S. Lewis did on the idea that I don't believe in the sun simply because I see the sun, but because I see all things by the sun.
Yes.
And I try to first of all be as clear in understanding the scripture as I can, and then ask if it answers the problems that we've talked about, um, in a way that makes sense, if it gives me a worldview that makes sense. And so I've never really thought about a collective consciousness to enough to really even speak to it. But I would look at you and I would see you or me as, our ancestor was formed of the dust of the ground, scripture tells us.
Right.
And he was made in the image of God. And and he reflected back the glory of God to the creator. And then a terrible fall happened where there was a cosmic treason, and mankind, Adam, chose to believe the word of the enemy over the word of God, and he was deeply broken and shattered, so that now there's residual reflections of the image of God, but it's broken and it's shattered. And to me, that's what I see around me is the most wicked person, or the person who's most caught up in sinful things, still, your sister at her worst would have had, she was an image bearer
Yeah.
and would see these things that would remind you of that little girl you knew. And then you look at the most righteous, supposedly person, they do some of the dumbest stuff and some of the most and I'm talking about me, and people that are pastors that do stuff that's really jacked up. And well, that makes sense if we're broken,
Yeah.
And so I guess those are the kind of things that I look at and go, um, it just gives me a way that makes sense to the reality that I observe. And some things like these angels and demon theories that I've talked about, some of that stuff I'm still working on, still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I've not run into something like when I look at the text, I don't see something that contradicts it and tells me what I see with my own two eyes is not real, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And so those are,
Yeah. And
that's kind of where I'm at.
I can even get into it like science and biology. So science, the universe as a whole is perfect. It really is. It's mathematically perfect. Everything that we look at is mathematically perfect. That can't happen without a creator. And biology, um, my wife, my wife and I, when we spend enough time together, like we've been together for 19 years now. And if my, I come up with this one example that really sticks out in my mind because it was funny and it was fantastic and it was just one of those moments like, okay, yes, this is really happening. One time my wife was in the kitchen. She was making dinner and I'd come in, I smoke cigarettes, so I come in from outside smoking and I gone to the living room and I was getting ready to sit down and I got this tune in my head. And then my wife starts singing it. How do you explain that
Mhm.
without without a creator? How do you explain that without God or collective consciousness? And
Something's
women,
happening here for sure.
yes, and women, when I don't know if you know this, but biologically, if you get a bunch of women together and they hang out together for a long time, work, church. I don't know if church is necessarily long enough, but I know that work is definitely long enough. Their cycles, their menstrual cycles will sync up together.
I've heard that.
How do
Yeah.
you explain that without God?
Mm.
With it, like that's biology, How do you explain that? Like it's nature. It is in our nature to reproduce, just like it's in a woman's nature to be catty to one another during a certain time of a month because they're in competition with each other. They don't understand that, but a biologist would. And when all the scientists that I know, and I know a few, All the scientists that I know are not atheists. They're
No, that's
believers.
been my experience. Our previous station of ministry was in Huntsville, Alabama, and the number one
I love
employer.
Huntsville. I love Huntsville, Rocket City, buddy.
So the it's the highest PhD per capita in the United States is in Huntsville, and it was a tough place to pastor because they knew a lot. But I had that same experience as they were not given to unbelief. They were fascinated whether they're looking at the stars or the cells of a plant, at the remarkable intellect behind what they're observing. And that was interesting to me because I always assumed it would be the opposite.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And like since I've been doing this podcast and I'm a consumer of podcasts, first of all. Like Joe Rogan, you'd mentioned Joe Rogan. He's one of my favorites. Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's a little too far right for me. But I love Tucker Carlson as a reporter,
It's
as
interesting to
a
listen to. Yeah.
yeah, he has a lot of great questions and a lot of great talking points that I just never hear and I never think about until I hear it from Tucker Carlson. And then I'm like, yes, that makes sense to me. And he
Check
talks
out,
to some very interesting people.
I think it was the last episode that we produced with Jeff Childers. It's the Jeff Childers episode. Jeff has a Substack that's read by millions of people. And it in written form, I'm trying to make him a regular on my podcast now and give him a segment on it. But in written form, you'll enjoy it from the way you think, the way you see the world. It'll be one of your favorite things to read. um, it's kind of a go-to daily for me now. But that's been our top episode, and we talk about all of this stuff. And Jeff sees it. He's an attorney, but he's very well read, and he sees some things at angles that have just not occurred to me. And the best stuff, we just didn't have the guts to put it on the air. But
Yeah.
it's some
Yeah.
good stuff
That's
out
not
there.
me. I love the types of guys like Joe Rogan is a perfect example. He's not afraid of anything. He just says what's on his mind. If he's thinking it is saying it, and he doesn't watch it back. He doesn't watch his show back. And luckily he has enough money that he doesn't have to, right?
Yeah.
And he has people that he can have do that, but he doesn't care. It's just a conversation. He doesn't have to be careful of what he
Well, it's the
says.
guest. It's not the host that's got to be careful. It's the guest that's never done this before. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm the same way. I tell them up front, we can go anywhere you want to go. If you don't want to go there, I'm not going to push you there.
right.
But I'll tee it up and you go if you want to. Um, but yeah, I'm the same way. I love that conversation to where we may not get it right on all this stuff, but let's at least put it on the table, or
Yes.
acknowledge that it's already there. But so I
I
enjoy it
like to
as
explain it
well.
like I'm not an unreasonable person. And my mind can be changed, especially if new information comes up. So if I get things wrong, like don't hate me for it, correct me,
Yeah,
teach me
right.
and
Right.
educate me, show me how I'm wrong, and I'll correct that. I'm not an
Same.
unreasonable person. I love to say that because like so many times. So I've had a few guests on that. One guest in particular, it was political. It was based in beliefs and stuff like that. That the conversation that we had was a great one, but it just seemed like he was apprehensive about talking about the certain subject that we were talking about. And we put it out, and it did really well. We didn't have any negative comments on it, but he was worried about employment. He's like, hey, I have to live here in the city. I don't want this to impact my life negatively. Can we take that down? And I was like, for sure, for sure. I will absolutely do that for you. And I did that. I took it down. I don't want to because
Yeah.
since we've taken it down, it seems like it was an 80-20, uh, 80%, 20% issue. 20% did not believe the way he did. 80% does. And it just happened to be on the transgender subject. This young man was fired from a job for saying something extremely insensitive, but not out of line with his beliefs. And he was fired. He was canned for what he said. And it was discriminatory, but so was his firing. He was fired for something very discriminatory. He was a Christian and he had a certain set of beliefs, and he made an off-color joke that was aimed at this transgender person, and this transgender person wasn't even the one that got mad. They thought it was funny. And
That's not unusual.
yes, exactly. And I wanted to talk to him about it and have him on the podcast because I'm a free speech absolutist, first of all. And forget about my religious beliefs because it didn't even enter the conversation, but his did. And I want people to be free to speak whatever they want and not have the consequences of losing a job, losing family, losing friends. I think that's bullshit. I really do. I think it's extreme. It is a way to control our thoughts and behaviors. And if you mess with our money, that's the quickest way to get us to change our opinions and thoughts.
I'm reading a book right now that you would probably be interested in. It's a biography of Mark Twain, and he's from your
Missouri,
neck of the
yes.
woods. Yeah. And but he saved a certain number of his writings that could only be published after he was gone. And he said, the only people in this world who have the liberty of truly free speech are the dead people.
Amen.
And it was the same argument that I'm going to kill my economic engine if I publish my true thoughts politically or whatever it was, you know. And so his one of his assistants, he gave her the rights to the material once he died that she could make money off of that work. It was really interesting.
There's only one thing that I've hesitated to really talk about my true feelings on, but that's Israel. To be honest with you, I was just talking to my wife about that last night.
About
How,
Israel.
yeah, people
I'm
really don't want to know my true feelings on that because I'm
I'm
very,
supposed to go back in three or 4 weeks. We've got a trip to where the Israeli government is flying me over, and they want to talk to me and a number of other pastors about what's really going on, all this kind of stuff. And so it's the same kind of thing. It's like they will know what I said on this podcast. They will know. I don't know how they know, but they find it. And you think about that and you go, but you know, if it's what I really believe, shouldn't I want them to know this is where I'm at, whether it's always on their in their favor or not?
well, if
You
they're
know,
going to listen to this, like I'll tell you, like I will, my true feelings on Israel is that they are just in what they're doing. Take away the media attention on what's happening to the children over there, nobody would care. Nobody would care. And my honest opinion of it is Israel did what they needed to do. And I stand with Israel 100%. I stand with Israel. Now, if they decide to keep going with this thing, I'm standing behind them because of October 7th and the visceral reaction that I had to October 7th. I'm not religious. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Christian. You know, I am Christian in my heart, but I don't practice. Um, I absolutely believe that Israel is right in what they're doing. And I don't think the indiscriminate bombing that we see on the media, I don't think that's really happening. I think that's media twisting things around. I think that Israel has shown great restraint in what they've done
if
so
there's
far.
anything from the tech that we've seen, a lot of it was developed in Huntsville, by the way, but the tech that we've seen that they have the capacity, there's nothing indiscriminate that they're
Yeah.
doing. They can control those missiles. What Hamas is the equivalent, I've been told by the people who designed it. It's my numbers are way off, but if Hamas is lobbing, or Yemen or whoever is lobbing $100 missile into Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, the missile that they're shooting back at it is a $10,000
Yeah.
missile. And it's they don't we don't waste those. You make it hits its target. And now it may not be the target that we think they should hit, but it's going to hit what they intended it to hit.
I
It's
am
there.
so fascinated by the Iron Dome.
It is. It's an amazing thing, and it will not shoot down every missile. It only shoots
Yes,
down the ones that are coming to population centers.
that's one of the things that I am intrigued most about that system is it can discern where these things are going to land. And if it's going
Oh
to
yeah.
land in like an open field, it just lets it go.
But the engineering of a lot of that stuff happened in Huntsville, and Redstone Arsenal is where a lot of those engineers are at. And so long before this happened, we sat down and talked about the Iron Dome, and it's strange to me that we don't have one because
I think we
most of
do.
our engineers built it. I, it doesn't make any sense to me why we would provide that for another
So
country.
you know that Golden Dome. So I actually we didn't provide Israel with the Iron Dome. So we funded it. They built it. And it had to be Israel because they're the only ones being shot at on a regular basis. And like it wouldn't happen here unless they wanted the full weight of the United States military to come after them, which nobody does. I believe in my heart. Now, I don't have anything to back this up. I don't have any proof, but I believe the Golden Dome already exists.
Mm.
I believe that the United States government has technology that nobody will ever see unless we need it. And if you take Ukraine for an example, there's all kinds of things that we don't know about Ukraine. And the number one thing that nobody is aware of is how much intelligence the United States government is giving to Ukraine to not only help them, but help us develop new things. And Russia had launched a ballistic missile, and we knew about it as soon as it was launched. Another thing happened in Iran. Iran launched a ballistic missile. We knew about it when it happened. Those those two incidents are so far apart that you cannot know these things unless you're looking at them. Now, I believe something similar, maybe a very primitive version of the Golden Dome, but I believe parts of it already exist, or they wouldn't be talking about it because they've been working on it since the 70s.
Maybe, maybe we've got a Kings Bay sub base here, and you could get up. Part of our congregation, a couple of the members, their job is to climb up on all of the buildings in our city and kind of do like war games. If you
Yeah.
were going to attack one of those subs with a RPG or something, what would you use? How would you do it? Where would you? And they would create these scenarios and then create the security system to counter, their ideas. And so it's been fascinating to see some of the things that they're using. They've got animals that are trained that if somebody comes underwater, that those animals, the dolphin or whatever it is equipped to go and attack the intruders.
I I thought that was one of the craziest things I had ever heard a few years ago. Like I'd heard about that in 2022. That Russia has dolphins in their military, and I was like, that's
You know,
weird,
we've got them
but
too.
really
We've got
cool.
them too.
Do we?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I've been told that you don't want to play with that they've got animals that are trained to help patrol underwater.
It
Uh,
reminds me of that movie Austin Powers. Have you ever seen that movie?
it's
It's
been a long
got
time.
sharks with laser beams on their frickin' heads.
But
It's
yeah,
so
we'll
great.
fish out here and the subs will come in and out, And at one time, we had to, if your vessel was pointed toward the sub, they would make you turn it away from it
Yeah.
so you could ram it. They're not quite as strict about that as they used to be, but I mean, every time we see them, I'll tell my son, certain classes of subs could wipe out the East Coast. They've got enough warheads on that thing, nuclear warheads, that
And if that's not enough to scare you, we have 66 nuclear subs.
wow,
66. Those are not nuclear, but nuclear powered, meaning
right.
they don't have to surface for a long time. So as long as if they've got food, they can stay underwater.
Well, and it's fascinating when you talk about all of the sightings, the UFO sightings that have happened around those bases.
Yes.
I tell you, I'm a believer enough that when I'm out on a clear night, I'm watching.
Me
I'm
too. Me too.
watching.
I've never seen anything, but I want to.
Yeah,
I
I'm
definitely
the
want
same.
to.
I've never seen anything that there's been a couple that I thought maybe, but nothing that I could be a slam dunk on.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It's such a it's very very and this has been a great conversation. I love
I
conversations
enjoy
like
it.
this. And it just goes to show you like when I was a kid thinking about all the judgment that I got from church, and it was probably more imagined than it was real, you know. And of course, none of us are perfect, but sometimes I judge people too, you know. And for me, I think it's easier. I think it would be easier for me to go to church now because I'm so comfortable with who I am. I don't really care if anybody would be happy with me or not. Maybe it's not my congregation. I
Well,
can,
and things change and churches are different. So I can't speak for anybody's church but mine. But I can tell you that you would be right at home if you showed up on Sunday here. The men of our church would love talking to you. And I think the coolest thing for me, I'm 49. The coolest thing for me about this congregation is the men who are in their 70s that they've they've kind of grown out of some of those things that we faced when we were teenagers. They were the adults then, but they've lived long enough that they've seen fallacies and they've grown and matured, and they're super approachable and have been super helpful to me. My dad passed away 10 years ago, and I feel like I've got half a dozen dads now,
yeah, yes.
and and we need that. Guys like us need that, and it's been sweet. So,
And not only
encouraging.
do we need that, but brother, our kids coming up need it too.
Totally, totally.
You know, that's one of the biggest things that I've seen in some of the youth. Gen Z is their father's not around.
No,
They don't have any dads. You know, a lot of the kids that I know don't have good relationships with either parent, and it's heartbreaking. And like some of my son's friends are like, "Oh, you're the coolest dad I know," and I'm like, "Really? That's weird." You know, that's it's always weird for me to hear that because I think I'm one of those strict dads that nobody would like, and then to come to find out that the structure and the rules based order kids thrive on that. They really do. They have to have structure because if they're looking at us to guide them and show they don't know what the hell they're doing. Take my 21-year-old for example. He's just now learning to be, he just had a baby. He's just now learning how to be a dad. And when I was first a father, I didn't know how to be a dad. And I still don't know how to be a dad. But that more comes from the fact that my own father wasn't around.
mhm,
And when I realized that when not only let's just say me and my wife we fight all the time. Let's just say that as an example, we fight all the time, but we love each other. Even if we fought every day, our kids would still come out happier at the end if we stayed together because they had both parents. And
Totally,
I'm
totally. Yeah.
I'm a stay-at-home dad. I see it all the time, how fathers are disengaged. They think that just, that the fun of having a baby and then you have the baby and now dad's job is just to provide. It's not, that's not what dad's job is. Dad's
No.
job is to provide and protect. And part of that protect is teaching them and guiding them through the times that they need you. And Gen Z just kind of got screwed on that.
Yeah, and they're resilient. I've found in the ones that we deal with, whether they're in a family or they're coming alone, um, they're incredibly resilient. They learn fast. They decide quickly what they want to believe. They have a really good BS meter, and they that served them pretty well. So we try to make a lot of on ramps where they can plug in quickly. It's a very multi-generational church. Um, I in Huntsville, the median average and modal age of that congregation was 35.
No kidding.
Incredibly
That's,
young.
that's pretty
It's
good.
much wider here, the spectrum, but I found that this is healthier to have kind of an equal measure of new babies being born and funerals.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum there, pretty even. Um, I would rather my kids grow up here than in a super cool young hip church, or a uber traditional senior adult driven church. This has been a really good community for them to thrive in, and a lot of people in their corner. They're the pastor's kid, um, but they probably have needed a little bit of that extra encouragement along the way, and it's served us well. So, occasionally you want to take the pastor's hat off and just be a satisfied customer, and I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. But yeah, check it. Don't let the first one discourage you. Check out a few maybe, and I hope you
So
find. Yeah.
where is your church located? Where
It,
exactly?
I've never been here, so I'm not surprised you don't know, but it's called Amelia Island, and it's just north of Jacksonville, Florida, on the East Coast.
Okay.
So, um, Jekyll Island is where the Fed was created, Federal
Okay.
Reserve. So if you'll read about it occasionally. We're south of that, and it's just a little resort community. It's the church is like 1250 in attendance, um,
That's
which
pretty
is
like
it's a
that's pretty big
small
actually
town.
for me,
It's a small town, so it's a big church in a small town. In Dallas, that's not big at all, but
right?
here it's a bigger church. But we have multiple. We have a second campus, and we really focus on groups, so that I grew up in a church of 30. So when somebody like me comes in, they can plug into a group where they have a little church within the big church.
Yeah, yeah, and that is incredibly important too because like I was a member of like the youth group growing up, and that was one of my favorite things is going to youth group on Wednesday nights, and we had our Bible study, and then it was fun time, and we ate dinner, we broke bread together, and our youth pastors when I was growing up were really really good at communicating with the younger folks. And I guess that's why they had the job that they did,
And,
right?
and they're the pastors today. Youth
Yes.
guys back then are the pastors today, and church planters and all that. And so I think that may be why, people like us can feel comfortable coming back. But yeah, we still, this church is a little bit of a time warp because we still do youth group. A lot of churches don't have that anymore. Um, but I don't know, man. I don't want to oversell it, but it's just been, and most pastors don't really like their church. So for me to say I like it and I'm enjoying it sincerely, that's a special thing.
Really? Most pastors don't like their church?
Most pastors don't enjoy it. Um, they're barely hanging on. It's very sad.
Really?
It's a
That's
tough.
that's interesting. I'd never heard that before. Um,
Yeah. I don't know the exact stats, but it's remarkably low the fulfillment rate of pastors, because most churches are hard to lead, very hard to
Yes.
lead.
Yes. And I'm sure the compensation isn't that great either, you
Well,
know.
we say, the pay is not that great, but the retirement plan's out of this world.
That's so funny. That that's funny. Well, Zach, I think this would be a great place to bring this conversation to a conclusion, but I definitely want to do this again. And
Let's do it, man. I'd love to have you on our
I
program.
that'd be fantastic actually. I it's so amazing when I have these conversations, and I'll just tell you, I wasn't looking forward to this, to
No,
be
I can
honest with
imagine.
you. I woke up this morning. I was very tired and hadn't had my coffee yet, and I was grumbling around the house. I don't know, don't want to talk to this guy, blah, 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 you know. And it happens sometimes where I'm not really excited about the podcast, but the ones that happens to the ones that happens, I'm are usually the best ones, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why I keep coming back in here when I don't want to or when I don't feel good or you know, and it really didn't have anything to do with you. It's just I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning last night with my youngest and
People ask why, because I'm of the opinion that every pastor, if not every man, ought to have a podcast. And but it's very much in my nature. And I tell people that I do podcasting for the same reasons dogs bark. It's just in their nature to do it.
yes.
And it's what I do. And so yeah, but it's been strangely therapeutic for me over the time that I've done it.
Therapeutic. That's a great word to describe it. It's very therapeutic for me. And like I didn't want to come in here this morning and then um when I turned on the computer and I brought up your information, your YouTube page. When I brought that up, and then the last video you posted was about marriage and money, and I listened to a little bit of that, and I was like, yes, this is the reason why I want to talk to people. You know, I love your take on that, and that one of the first names that you had mentioned was Dave Ramsey, and I really love Dave Ramsey, not for his financial takes, because quite frankly, I think some of them are bullshit. But I love Dave Ramsey's the love that he has for his wife is
Yeah.
it is very apparent on his show, and he's not he is religious, but he's not so religious that it turns you off. You know,
Dave is Kid Rock's neighbor, and they're close friends.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Most of these guys are really different than you project, than you imagine they would be. But yeah, he lives in Nashville. They trade out each year. Dave does fireworks one year, Kid Rock does them one year, and they watch each other's fireworks show. But I've liked that about Dave. Dave, bringing Rachel into the mix, and you, it's hard to do ministry with family or business with family, but he figured some of that out. My son is, I'm like you. I'm like, Dave has made it because of a media plan that Dave had.
He's a
I
salesman,
don't
definitely a
know.
salesman.
Yeah, I don't know that he's the guru sometimes, but my son has drank the Kool-Aid, and he's just dived deep into Dave Ramsey world. So there are worse places to dive, right? So
Well, so the thing is, Dave Ramsey's not wrong. He's not wrong on a lot of the advice that he gives. The things that I find difficult is the suffering that you got to go through to just pay your debt. I really don't believe debt's all that horrible myself. I use debt
it's
as
a
a
tool,
tool, yeah,
right?
as a tool to further myself. But if used incorrectly, debt can absolutely ruin your life.
Yeah.
And
If you
that's
use it
where
like a
Dave
drug
Ramsey is.
rather than a tool, then that's a problem.
Exactly, exactly. And Dave Ramsey wants to prevent those things. And I
Right.
didn't even I guess if I listened to his show, I might know, but I didn't know he lived in Nashville either. My sister lives down
Yeah.
there, so I'm down there quite a bit.
They
And
don't talk on the show about it very much. Kid Rock talks about it more than Dave does, but yeah, if you just watch some of the, I like to find people if I'm interested in them and go do an interview off topic,
Yeah.
like do an interview off topic. And so I don't know where I found it at, but somewhere on YouTube they got to talking about being neighbors and several of these guys who strangely um, are bedfellows or all in one movement, that you would not have expected. But but they're getting along really well,
Yeah.
HOA
Yeah.
just has to deal with it.
I think they're both probably pretty easy to get along with. And like I'd mentioned before, Dave Ramsey's his love for his wife is very contagious. And I connect with that because I I I'm very much in love with my wife. Very
Excellent.
much. We've been together for 19 years and I still get anxious when it's time for her to come home from work. I'm a
Mm.
stay-at-home dad, so I'm here all the time. When she gets off work, I'm like my hands, my palms get sweaty and I can't wait to see her come in the door and then inevitably she comes in the house bitching, but that's another story for another time.
I can't
But
relate at all, brother. I don't know where you're going to there. So.
but his love for his wife makes me so happy because I love love and I love when men can share those feelings about their significant other or their kids or their families or their friends even. I tell my friends I love them all the time. As a man, if you're comfortable enough to do that, I'm comfortable enough to be friends with you. And I identify with that. And Dave Ramsey's disposition on family, period, is so wonderful that his message is not just financial advice. His advice it really goes to keeping your family together and keeping that drive of being that provider and protector for your family alive and gives the younger generations a lot of hope and while also trying to help you figure out how to buy a house.
Yeah. Well, don't forget to check out Doug Wilson. If you
Doug
like Dave
Wilson,
Ramsey for that reason, you'll love Doug Wilson. Um,
I'm gonna
it's
have to
got
check
a
that
lot.
out.
Canon Plus is their media department, and they've got a lot of material out there. But there's things I disagree with. There's things I disagree about with myself. But I'll qualify it by saying that. But but I love his content, and I think you'll find it very fascinating.
Awesome. Awesome. And like I said, this is a great place to leave this conversation. Where can people find you, man? Are you on social media or
If they Google my name, Zach Terry, or go to zachterry.com, ZACHTERRY, everything else is pretty much there. Our podcast, our sermons, books, all that stuff's available.
yeah, as a matter of fact, when I did Google your name, we were the first person that popped up. Your podcast popped up and everything. So you're doing great on the Google. So if anybody wants to find Zach, you can find him. Just Google his name. And also shout out the name of your podcast one more time.
CodeRedTalk.com. Code, uh,
CodeRedTalk.com.
yeah, they
And
can get it there.
which
It
platform do you prefer to push? Do you prefer them to go to YouTube or Spotify or?
it's video driven. It's all in studio. So we've not figured out. We've tried River Stream and a few other things. We haven't gotten what we're wanting video to do stream. I do it online yet, but um, so that limits us some. But I think there've been some fascinating episodes. But yeah, they're all on YouTube, and coderedtalk.com will take you to the YouTube channel. And all of
Awesome.
our social media handles are just at Zach Terry.
Awesome.
There's like 12 other Zach Terrys in the world that hate me because I've got them all years ago. But
Yeah, that's okay. They can hate all they want. They can if you're not if somebody doesn't hate you, you're not doing it right, man.
there you go.
All right, Zach Terry, senior pastor at First Baptist Church in Fern. How do you say that? Fernandina,
Fernandina. Fern,
Fernandina
Fern,
Beach, Florida.
Fernandina. There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Will you hang out with me for just a second, Zach? We'll let these guys go. We'll see
Thanks for having
everybody
me
next
on.
time.